Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. You know what's a way bigger mess than Penn State and James Franklin right now? The North Carolina Tar Heels. And so I'll be honest, like with North Carolina, I think my opinion, if you were listening to this show a year ago, and we've had so many new listeners, we appreciate everybody. If you were listening a year ago, like I think I was actually in the middle on Bill Belichick in North Carolina. Like I think there were a lot of people that were like, it's going to be a train wreck. And then there were some that were like, he's won 6 Super Bowls. He's going to be great. And I was kind of in the middle. I was kind of like, well, on the one hand, he's kind of selling this whole notion of we're the 33rd NFL team and we have NIL money and I have a professional background and we have a front office infrastructure that you've never seen before in college football. And I was like, well, wait a second now. Everybody's got NIL money. So like, oh, cool. You raised $20 million in NIL. Guess what? You know who else has $20 million? Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, Texas A&M, Florida. I mean, everybody's got NIL money. And so I was never sold that he was going to bring anything to college football that college football hadn't seen before. You still need players. And I still said, like, him recruiting against Dan Lanning, him recruiting against Kirby Smart. Listen, we could criticize James Franklin for a lot. Recruiting is not an issue. So it's like, how many of those recruiting battles were you going to win? And it doesn't matter if you don't have the players, right? But conversely, I also said this. I said a few things. I said, one, he's going to the ACC. If he was going to the SEC, I don't know that I would feel the same way, but he's going to the ACC. There's so many wins on the schedule. He's going to be fine. He's going to be this. You know, at the very least, the defense is going to be elite. And then from there, can you scratch together enough points on offense? And I thought, I thought he could go 7-5. I thought he could go 8-4. Well, we may have to flip that because right now the North Carolina Tar Heels are 2-3 overall. I would argue while their schedule isn't tough, there are now all of a sudden games that look a lot tougher given North Carolina's stature and how they've played through a couple games. And so the point I'm trying to make, it's a total disaster. It's certainly gone worse than I expected. 2-3, 0-3 against power conference teams. Basically, by the way, the power conference teams, it's not even like they're losing to good teams. Clemson was 1-3 coming into that game Saturday and destroyed North Carolina. UCF, I give Scott Frost credit. He's been better than I thought, but he's 3-2 overall. It's not like he's lighting the world on fire at UCF. TCU was another team that I thought was going to be this juggernaut. I thought maybe TCU was just better than we thought. Well, TCU lost at Arizona State a few weeks ago and is 4-1 and solid, but certainly not unbeatable. I think beyond that, it's not just that the record stinks. The production and quality of play stinks. I mean, you watch this. This team is unwatchable. 3 games against power conference teams. This is what they've done. They lost 48-14 to TCU, 34-9 to UCF, 38-10 to Clemson. Not great at math, but that's 35 points through 3 power conference games. That comes out to about 12 points per game against power conference teams, 133rd nationally in total offense. And I think what's crazy is, to the point that I made a minute ago, the defense hasn't been good either. That's the crazy part. I think they're like ranked 82nd or something in the country in total defense. 38 points allowed to Clemson, 34 allowed to UCF, 48 allowed to TCU. And so clearly it's not going well. I did see somebody in the chat say you got to give him time to get in his players. And to a degree, I believe it. But if you're paying attention, there is stuff going on behind the scenes that is clearly way worse than we realized and clearly more chaotic than we realized. Really quick, Matt, before we get to the article, I didn't even mention this to you, Matt, but the story that came out on, I guess it would have been Monday morning, that the North Carolina social media team was not allowed to post anything positive about New England Patriots players. Of course, Bill Belichick came from New England. That's problematic because, The most prominent North Carolina player in the NFL right now is Drake May, who just led an upset win against the best team maybe in the NFL, against the Buffalo Bills. And there was a big lag between when the social media team posted something and then they posted something and then everybody knew that the story had gotten out. So it's a disaster. But as bad as I thought it was, I'll say this. I want to give credit. WRAL, that is the NBC affiliate in North Carolina that covers the team. Support local journalism, people, at least in North Carolina with WRAL. They did an incredible deep dive piece on the state of the program, everything that's going wrong. And I'll say this, the article should have just been titled, "Everything That Could Go Wrong Is Going Wrong." But I think it was shocking just how many things are an issue, from the way he handles his team, to discipline, to accountability, to the way he communicates, to the coaching staff. I mean, it just should have been Trainwreck starring Bill Belichick. Like, it was that bad. I'll be honest, I had trouble limiting the number of quotes from the article that I wanted to share because it's so bad. Let's just get to a couple that kind of explains just how bad this is. Again, this is from WRAL in North Carolina. The first one, according to sources, there's a board. And so, by the way, let me set this up. You can leave this on the screen, Matt. So let me set this up. So there was a big section about basically how there is certain preference for players that came in the transfer portal as opposed that stayed from the Mac Brown era. Okay. And so I bring it up. They started naming individual players. It was anonymous sources. I didn't think it was fair to include all of the individual players, but this was part of that conversation about how certain players have preferential treatment, specifically the ones recruited by Belichick and his coaching staff as opposed to the previous one. According to sources, there's a board in the UNC football facility that lists people who have missed workouts in class. Some Belichick recruited players repeatedly show up on that list, but have not had their playing time affected. Again, WRAL, North Carolina, Pat Welter. Matt, we could just go ahead and go to the second one and then we'll break it all down. And again, these are just a couple of the quotes. I could have literally done the whole article, but I saved you some time. I want to get you over to that article. It says, his ability to communicate with players and parents has also furthered the divide. According to sources, the players who chose to stay at North Carolina after Mac Brown's firing didn't meet with Belichick for weeks after he was hired. Parents were told not to approach Belichick. They didn't meet Belichick and his staff until the practice like a pro spring game. So again, took the job in December. Parents of returning players did not meet Belichick or the staff until the spring game in probably late March or early April. The article continued. There's been no communication with coaches and parents, period. A parent of a current North Carolina player said, none, zero, zilch, not one email from a coach, one text, one phone call, nothing. And so again, by the way, didn't include the part about the coaching staff, didn't include the part about a lot of different things, but I think that just paints a picture for how chaotic it is. And I actually want to dive into half a second of those things. First of all, the thing about players missing workouts and not being held accountable, that was like shocking to me, because the thing about Belichick, whatever you think about Belichick and how much did Brady have a role in this and that, the one thing you could always count on with Bill Belichick was the idea that like players were going to be held to a certain standard, right? And if you weren't all in, he was booting you all out. Like I was thinking about this as I was prepping for the show on Tuesday morning. He benched his best cornerback, Malcolm Butler, in a Super Bowl. And we still don't know what happened. But clearly the player did something, either showed up late or wasn't accountable or did this or did that. No one to this day knows why Malcolm Butler was benched in the Super Bowl. That coach is now letting players show up late or skip workouts and still not holding them accountable. So you have that. By the way, I remember there was another story. Like I think there was a player like on Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football. It was a running back. I remember he rushed for like 150 yards, then showed up late to the facility later that week and got cut after he rushed for 150. So Belichick was the ultimate accountability guy. Now players are, quote, repeatedly showing up on the list as late, but have not had their playing time affected. That's not the Bill Belichick I know, people. What's the old meme? Mark Jackson, what happened to the game I love? What happened to the Bill Belichick I love? I think beyond that, the second quote, the part about being zero communication with coaches and parents. That to me is as important. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, that to me is not that surprising. And to me, I know I said to me 7 times there, I apologize. But paraphrasing, to me, that is the most important thing. And that was the biggest thing about Belichick coming to college that I was worried about personally is, listen, I understand this notion of, oh my goodness, we have this new system and it's a pro style and it's going to work in college. Okay, cool. But at the end of the day, they are two fundamentally different sports, and it takes two fundamentally different skill sets to achieve at the highest level. Bottom line is, I know we're paying college athletes like they're professionals now. And I, maybe more than anybody, has zero sympathy if you don't do what you need to do and schools kick you to the curb. You know, if Texas decides to move off Arch Manning this year because he's not good enough, I'm sorry, I don't feel bad. Dude is making $2, $3, $4, $5, $10 million, whatever it is. I don't feel bad. If, you know, Nico Iamaleava struggling because he left a better situation at Tennessee for UCLA, I'm less sympathetic because we know it was over money, okay? But at the end of the day, there is still a baseline thing that college coaches have to do in terms of, you know, kind of communicating with players and getting with players. And this isn't the NFL. In the NFL, guys understand this is their job. They have wives. They have kids. They don't have time to sit in your office and tell you about what's going on. In college, it's the opposite. Many of them are away from home for the first time. Many of them, don't forget, are coming from all sorts of places, all different circumstances. You know, 70 new players. It's 70 new just guys that are in a new place. They don't know what to expect. They don't know anything about the coaching staff. And it's just, you need to be more accountable and you need to be more present. Or here's the thing. If you're not going to be, you have to put a staff in place that is. And that's the thing I think maybe even for me, I don't know that I realized how bad it was until the season started. Not just is Bill Belichick going to work, but does he even have anything resembling the right staff? Now, they went through the staff in the article they mentioned. Mike Lombardi's the GM. He's been out of football for about 8-9 years now, was at VSiN, was doing media stuff. Mike Lombardi's son is the quarterback's coach, had no real coaching experience before getting this job. Steve Belichick, who outside of last year at Washington had only worked for his father, is the defensive coordinator. Bill Belichick's younger son, who essentially had no coaching experience outside of working for his father, is, I want to say, the DB's coach or some sort of position coach. A couple former Patriots players with no coaching. And so it's not just that Bill Belichick is new to college football. It's not just that transparently they took the wrong approach of, oh, we're the 33rd NFL team. You have to have people in place that understand the ecosystem, right? I do a podcast every day. If this podcast went live on TV every day, I would talk to TV people how to make it better than as a TV product, you know, whatever. You get the point, is that you have to have people that understand the ecosystem and the environment that you're walking into. And it's clear that Belichick and his people do not. That's the crazy part to me, is it's so obvious that in over his head is probably not the right word, but that it's just not going to be a good fit. Tiger can't change his stripes. A leopard can't change its spots, right? And Bill Belichick is not the kind of guy that is going to be able to put together good rosters in college football. Like, good players, listen, maybe on defense, maybe a linebacker, a secondary guy, whatever. But again, a couple things. One, you have to have the guys on the staff that have the relationships to put you in position to get those good players, right? I mean, you know, whatever. I don't know that Mike Lombardi, who's been out of football for 10 years and has never been in college in 30 years, 40 years. I think 1982 was like the last time he coached in college. I don't know that that guy is going to be the guy that has the relationships that you need to get the players in your door. And then more importantly, I don't know that Bill Belichick has the personality to close the deal. We haven't heard a lot of stories of players from the transfer portal, but they went after all the big ones. They had a meeting with John Mateer. They had a meeting with a couple other guys, and they couldn't really land the guys that you need to make a difference. And I think it's because they have the wrong people in place, and they have the wrong head coach to close recruits. I mean, you go back to when Nick Saban was a head coach. Yeah, he was a little grumpy once you got to campus, but in a parent's home, in a kid's home, in grandma's home, How many videos did we see of him dancing, of him, smiling, of him hugging grandma, of him doing whatever? And that's what it takes to recruit and win at the highest level. And so I could go on, but I'm a guy. Like I said, I was a little bit defensive of this hire. Like I thought it could potentially work. All of a sudden, I'm looking at it right now, and I think it's going to end poorly because part of it is, too, the schedule just looks tougher. Virginia is now a top 20 team. North Carolina has a bye this week. They play them in 2 weeks. They're not beating Virginia. They play at Cal next weekend. Cal's not a bad team. They're 4-2 overall, even though they got smoked by Duke the other day. Bet on that game. Whoops. By the way, Duke is good. Duke with Darian Mensah is all of a sudden playing really good football, 3-0 in ACC play. You go on and on down the list. Syracuse. Yeah, Syracuse is 3-3, but they smacked Clemson. NC State is 4-2. And so all of a sudden, like I thought, like worst case scenario, 7-5, 8-4. But as I said, I think we might have to flip those numbers because I think realistically we could be looking at not 7-4 or not 7-5, excuse me, but I think 5-7 is like the ceiling, and I think it could be like a 3-9 and 4-8. Now I'll say last thought because I want to get to some Tyron Stokes stuff. I would just be curious. Like how long, not only does North Carolina stay patient, but how long does he stay patient at the college level? I think it's clear this is not what he thought it was going to be. I think it's clear, by the way, there were a lot of distractions in his life that he maybe never had up until the last year or two. You can probably put together what those are. North Carolina, he's another one, by the way, much like James Franklin, much like Dabo Swinney, much like Mark Stoops, that cannot be fired. I think it's a $20 million buyout after this year. But I wonder if after, this year, next year, whatever, if he just says, you know what, this is not for me, I got to go in another direction.